Hello everyone. So this will be another video for the Lomuto partition for quick sort that we are using actually the last pivot here then. So as we do have in our condition for this one, that if your J, if there that is a greater than the value to the pivot itself. So what we will need to do is we will increment I, then we will swap that into I and J. Then what will be our if your J, if it is less than to the, I mean, greater than to the pivot, we will have to increment J itself, and there will be no changes will happen regarding on that. So, when everything was done, I mean, when everything's done, especially pertains to this each process, what we will need to do, we have to swap the pivot into the I plus one. What will be the address of your I? We have to increment that, and then we will swap them. So suppose that we do have this array right now, so we'll proceed into the step one. So for this step one, our pivot for this is one. So suppose that we will be going to base that in this array. So in each step, we will begin to have first pass, second pass, and everything until your pivot will be put in place. So for pass one, you suppose that your I is equals to -1, where your J is equals to 0. So your array 0 right now, that is 10. So you have to compare 10. Is it that is greater than to the pivot, which is 1. So we will need to increment 0. So there will be no changes will happen. Suppose that we'll begin to put update array. However, there is no changes being made. So we will just keep as is. So I'm so sorry. So your I right now will be still the same thing. I is equals to 0. Then I mean -1, and your J is equals to 1. So since you're sorry, since your 1 right now is 13, so you have to compare 13 is greater than actually greater than. So you have to still do the same thing, increment J, so there will be no changes will happen. So in your path 3, I is equals to -1 still, and your J is equals to 2, where your array 2 that is 81. So 81 is the same thing that is greater than, so you have to increment J, where will be no changes will happen. And in your path 4, what will happen for that? I is equals to -1, where your J is equals to 3, where your 3 right now, that is 5. So 5 is greater than to 1, so increment J, so there will be no changes. In your path 5 right now, I is equals to -1 still, your J is 4, so where your array 4 that is equals to 7, so 7 still is greater than um greater than the pivot, so we will need to increment J, and there will be no changes. So past 6, I is equals to -1, where your J is equals to 5, where array 5 that is 29. So 29 is greater than exactly to the pivot. We will need to increment still the same thing to J, so there will be no changes made. So in your past 7, the same thing equals -1, where your J is equals to 6. So earlier 29 array 6, but 5. Right now array 6 is definitely 35. So 35 is greater than to the pivot. So what we will need to do right now, you have to increment J. There will be no changes. So since we're we are done traversing all of the arrays right there. What we will need to do is we will swap pivot to I plus 1, where your I right now is -1, so I will become 0, whereas array 0 that is 10. What we will need to do, we have to put the updated array. So it will become 1, 13, 81, 5 base that here. 5, 7, 29, 35, and 10. So in this case right now, whereas your one, it's already sorted. So the next basis for your process will be that one. So let me just go ahead and bring the condition below that we will have a basis for our next step. Okay, let me bring this one here as well so that we can see it. Okay. All right. So this we'll proceed to the next step for our step 2. So for the step 2 right now, our pivot will be 10. And then we will base that into the array, which is 13, 81, 5, 7, 29, 35, and 10. Whereas you will need to, oh no, 10 will not be included in the that one, since this is your pivot. So in your path 1, I is equals to -1, where your j is equals to 0, where your 0 that is equals to 13. So according to our condition that is greater than to 10, which is we need to increment j. So there will be no changes will be made. We'll proceed into the second pass, where the same thing I equals to -1, where your j is equals to 0. No. Increment will become 1. Array 1 will become 81. So 81 is still greater than to the pivot, so we will need to increment j, whereas no changes will be made. So in your pass 3, that will become I is equals to -1 for them, whereas your j is equals to 2, where your 2, that is 5. So 5 is definitely less than to the pivot itself. So we have to increment I, whereas your I right now is at address -1, so it will become 0, so we have to swap them. So your 0 is 13, and your 2 is 5, so you have to swap them. So you have to put the updated array. It will become 5, 81, 13, 7, 29, and 35. So this will begin to base that right there. So in your task 4, it will become I is equals to -1, where, no, it's not -1 already, since we've implemented earlier. Will become 0, then your j is equals to 3, where your 3 right now is equals to 7 here. So 7 is definitely less than to the 5 volts, so we have to increment our I, where your I right now is 0, so it will become 1. So we have to swap. Well, I is equals to 1, that is 81, swap that into 7. So what we will need to do then, you have to write the updated array. So it will become 5, 7, 13, 81, 29, 35. So in your past 5, it will become I is equals to 1, where your j is equals to 4, where your 4 that is array 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, that is 29. So 29 is absolutely greater than the pivot. So what we need to do, increment j and there will be no changes. So in your path 6, I is equals to 1, where your j is equals to 5, where your 5 is equals to 35. So 35 is absolutely greater than the pivot. You have to increment j and no changes. Since we're done with the process right there, because 35 is the last element in our array, current array, right? Absolutely what we will need to do, we will swap pivot to I plus 1. Where your I plus 1 right now is um I is equals to 1, it will become 2. So therefore what we will need to do, your array 2, that is 0, 1, 2, that is 13. So swap 13 to um swap 13 to 10. It will become 1, 5, 7, 10, 81, 29, 35, and 13. So you were able to swap 13 and 10. So whereas your 10 is sorted and 1. So what we will need to do, we have left subarray and right subarray. What we will need to do is we'll begin to um sort first our we need to sort first our um left subarray before we will go to another array. One second, there is something wrong. Okay, it's not working well. We go ahead and return this updated element into the place. So now what we will need to do, we'll begin to proceed with the next step, which will become step 3, which we will be going to base in step 5 and 7. So your pivot right now is 7, where we will base that into 5. So path 1 is equals to I is equals to -1, where your j is equals to 0 and your array 0 is 5. So 5 compared to the pivot, that is less than to the value of pivot. 5 is less than to the value of the pivot, so we have to increment I. Which your I right now is 0. Then what will become that is equals to 0, where your array 0, that is 5. So sorry. Your pivot is 7, right? Okay. So 7, 5 is less than to 7. Okay, increment I and swap that to 1. So what will happen right now um, I'm not sorry, why we're able to redo that swap. So 5 is definitely swap that to itself since 0 and J. So what you'll need to do in your path 2, since there's no element already, what will happen? Since we have to swap supposedly pivot to I plus 1, where your I is equals to 0, it will become 1, so there's no element at 1. So therefore, we can assume that 5 is already in place. So there will be no swap to happen. So assume that 5 is already in place with regards to that one. You just you have to put the updated array. It will become 1, 5, 7, 10, 81, 29, 35, 13. So whereas you were able to solve for earlier 1 and 10, sorry, where are we? We're able to sort 1 and 10 and assume that we were able to sort 5 as well. So since 7, we need to do that recursively as recursively what we will need to do right now. Assume that 7 is also sorted. So we will need to sort this element right here since that will be our next subarray. There is it will become step 4, where your pivot is okay. Wait, your pivot right now is 13, where you will base that to 81, 29, 35. So what you will need to do in your path 1, I is equal to -1, where your j is equal to 0, where your 0 that is 81. 81 is absolutely greater than to the pivot, so you have to increment j, and then there will be no changes. In your path 2, where your I is equal to -1, your j is equals to 1, your 1 right now is 29, where your pivot is 13, so that is greater than to the pivot, and we have to increment j, and there will be no changes, the same thing. So in your path 3, I is equal to -1, where your j is equal to 2, where your 2 is equals to 35, where your 35 is absolutely greater than to the pivot 13, to increment um j, and there will be no changes will happen. So this is the end of your array right now. So you have to swap pivot to I plus 1, where your I right now is equal to -1, it will become 0, where your 0 is 81. So what will happen? your updated array will become 1, 5, 7, 10. So 81 is your 0 will become 13, 29, 35, and 81. So we were able to solve right now. 13 is sorted in this case, where you will base in this right subarray for the next steps. So let me bring this one. Oh, sorry. Okay, in your step 5, where your pivot right now is 81, and then where you will need to for base is 29 and 35. So in your plus 1, where I is equal to -1 and your z is equal to 0, where your 0 that is 29, so whereas your 29 is less than to the pivot, so we have to increment I, which is 0, then swap. So swap itself. So afterwards, pass 2 will become I is equal to 0, where if your j is equal to 1, where your 1 right now is 35 and 35 is less than with a pivot. So increment I, where your I right now is equal to 0, it will become 1. So you have to swap them. So I and j is already in 1, it swaps to itself the same. So since we are done with traversing everything, we have to swap pivot to I plus 1, where your I right now is definitely 1, it will become 2. So pivot is in place. So you have to update 1, 5, 7, 10, 13, 29, 35, and 81. So we were able to sort 81 at this stage. So last process, your step 6. So what you will need to do right here, your I is equal to, oh, no. Let me define it for you. Your pivot is 35, whereas you will base that here. So plus 1 is I is equal to -1, where your j is equal to 0, and where your 0, that is 29, and 29 is less than, with the pivot increment I and swap. So I will become 0, swap to itself. So where you need to swap pivot to I plus 1, where it becomes 1. So swap to itself. So since that is in place, 0 then 1, it swap to itself supposedly. So there's nothing we're not there's nothing to change there. If that is in place, we'll just stop the answer. So we were able to solve here 35. 35 is sorted, where you still have one array. So as as if that you're able to do the sorting recursively. The 29 is sorted right now. What you will need to do, you have to update the final array to become 1, 5, 7, 10, 13, 29, 35, and 81. So that is your sorted elements right now in your array. So thank you so much and see you in the next video then.